Hi,
Thank you.
everyone. I'm Peter Shea. I'm a learning designer by training, and I am the director of professional development at Middlesex Community College in Bedford and Lowell, Massachusetts. Michael, go ahead and
Hi, I'm Mike Sullivan. I am Director of E-Learning at a tiny college, Middlesex College, here in Edison, New Jersey. It's funny that we both have kind of Middlesex in our college names.
yes, it is. And next time we're going to bring in someone from Middlesex Community College of Connecticut to complete the trifecta.
There we go.
But thank you all for coming. Obviously, today's topic has gotten very timely. A little bit of background: as a learning designer and someone who's interested in edtech for over 25 years, I started looking at AI for educational purposes about 5 years ago, and I've on a variety of attempts to get people interested in it, which had mixed results until about a month ago, when thanks to ChatGPT, everyone began talking about AI and what does it mean. So in this session, we're going to talk a little bit about what AI is and what are the implications for educators, and we're going to point to a couple of resources that people can look at. We're going to do a quick demo of ChatGPT, and we're going to round out with a conversation based upon the questions in the Q&A, because we're very interactive in our approach, and we like to have a conversation with colleagues most of all. If you can, in the chat, just say where you're from and why you're interested in the topic, that'd be great. In the meantime, also, if you haven't had a chance to answer the poll as to whether or not you've used ChatGPT, please do so. And then at some point we'll share. So right now, based upon votes, it's virtually 50-50. Only slightly one person more said yes, but yes, no, so yeah, it's an interesting division, but it gives us a kind of a snapshot of where people are at with these kind of tools.
Yeah, when people see it, their jaws are gonna drop. It's just it's amazing seeing it work, how quickly it works. I've had the opportunity to kind of use it for a few things. I'm pretty impressed with the output. It's I don't want to say it's scary, because it's not, but it's very revolutionary. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yes. And the reason that we decided to tackle this, because as people in the learning design and technology background, we've seen a lot of things come and go. We are going to be almost professionally jaded, so we don't get easily impressed by anything. And so it seemed like a good time to weigh in, and for people who typically ask us, is this something we should be paying attention to, or is it another flash in the pan? First of all, a quick explanation of what AI is. ChatGPT is simply a tool based upon OpenAI platform, and it's basically an artificial intelligence chatbot. It was built on top of this open platform that's been in production since 2014, I believe.
Yes.
And it's been collecting a lot of data. And lately, a few months ago, in November, it had its kind of public release. So that's basically what we're going to be forming our conversation about, because the initial reaction to it, at least in the world of education, based upon conversations and what we see in the press, is, oh my gosh, this is some sort of higher tech plagiarism tool. It's much more than that, and the implications of AI are much greater than that. And that's what we hope to talk about today. So
yeah, we're in the third version now. I think this is the third version of ChatGPT. I know for the first 6 days it was open, there was over 100 million hits to it. So it is pretty amazing how quickly it's taken off. There's the only other real competitor out there, but I think they're the same company, is Bing. Bing, I got a preview too, but unfortunately it has a character limit with what we want to do. So we're going to stick with ChatGPT. And then the other thing with ChatGPT is the data only goes to 2021. So it's historic data. It's not current. Bing, though, will pull everything together, and that's the one that's going to be like, whoa. So.
Yeah, exactly. And Google is also working on its own AI tool called Bard, which has not been released yet. So a number of big players will be releasing their versions of it, because this is going to be obviously huge business for them.
Absolutely.
So, and as Mike pointed out, the adoption of the technology is very rapid. In fact, it's one of the fastest adoptions of a new technology in history. So
Yeah.
go ahead, next slide. So some of you may be familiar with Douglas Adams, who wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And Adams was, among other things, a technology geek and an observer of how people interact with it. And he articulated some interesting views about how people typically look at technology. So, Mike, if you hit the bar once, we'll see. You'll see the first view. Everything that's already in the world when you're born is just normal. Okay, hit it again. Anything gets invented between then and the time you turn 30 is incredibly exciting and creative, and with any luck, you can make a career out of it. And then the third rule is anything after 30 is against the natural order of things and the beginning of the end of civilization, which is right now the reaction you're seeing from a lot of people commenting in the media who are over 30, at least until it's been around for about 10 years when it gradually turns out to be all right. I think this is a pretty good description of the response we're going to be getting from AI. Now, AI is not quite like other tech tools. It's more akin to the rise of the internet. It is a singular technology that's going to have huge impact. A lot of it's positive. Some of it will certainly be negative. So we're not going to sugarcoat that. But at the same time, the genie is out of the bottle. So there really is much going forward to do other than to try to think about it in a calm and intelligent manner in the way that people expect people in academia to do. So.
Yes, we're already seeing there's an explosion already of just different products using the API. I'm already, if you just do a search, Google search, it's crazy, just the list that comes out. And I can tell you right now, we're going to be hit up by every vendor in the world with their kind of flavor of either Meta, Apple, Bing, and whatever else, and BART. So yeah, get ready for the vendors to start coming. You're going to see AI incorporated into a lot of stuff, which will be pretty interesting.
What frightens me is that we're going to see a lot of garbage with the word AI attached to it. Just a few years ago, I heard someone in the edtech company, in the edtech field, saying, in order to get venture capital, a lot of people were calling their tools AI when in fact they were not AI. You had to really look under the hood. So if you see some of these AI things that are not impressive, again, don't judge the whole potential of the technology based upon it. That's people simply rushing to get their products to market.
Yeah, very true.
Next slide. So what are some of the implications about AI in education? Well, there's been a lot of talk about plagiarism. And I was talking with Donald Clark, who is an expert on AI in education, and has been talking and writing about it for years. And so I brought up the whole plagiarism issue. And Donald's response was very succinct. He said, all plagiarism checkers essentially are like a finger on the dike trying to keep the water back. The past couple of years, we've been able to do some degree of plagiarism checking using tools like Turnitin. But, in the long run, we're not terribly optimistic that you'll be able to catch all or even most of the AI-generated attempts at plagiarism. I know that's not going to sound like a very positive message, but what it is, in fact, is an invitation to rethink how we do assessment and assignment design. Mm-hmm. Currently, a lot of our model focuses on summative assessment, which is the punitive type, the ones that students fear, the one that impacts their grade. And that's the one that primarily incentivizes them to cheat.
Right.
AI enables us to do much more formative assessment, things like chatbot. A chatbot can respond quickly to student work and student comments and give them constructive feedback. And that's non-threatening to students. And therefore, to some degree, the desire to cheat is disincentivized less. So we may see a significant cultural shift from summative to formative assessment, which in the long run is much more productive and much more impactful for students.
In Brian Alexander's presentation I saw, I think a couple days ago, one of the big things and one of the biggest shifts is to make it everything more personal to you. Assignments that are kind of put out there that only you would know and not the chatbot. So, deeply personal kind of projects, assignments, writing. That's one way to definitely go down the route. There's a whole bunch of other ones too. I mean,
Yes, and I have a slide at some point where Donald Clark points out that this technology actually enables us to return to the earlier model of education as a conversation, as a dialogue. And so, in that sense, it helps bring back an older, um, more vital model. Um, because if the technology enables the students to converse with it about topics and problems, um, the likelihood that it'll generate much more impactful learning experiences. And that's something that excites me, the potential for things like cognitive tutors.
Yeah.
And, as I was talking just the other day, it is an equity issue. One of the biggest advantages that some people with higher resources have is they can hire tutors. And that's what a lot of our students need. They need tutors, but we can't get one-to-one tutor for many people. With an AI-based tutor, you can really work towards making the playing field more even. And
And
I
especially
think
growing. Yeah, especially growing. If you continue to ask questions, the AI is going to grow with you. And one of the big goals with instructional design, I know, is deeply personal learning. So personalized learning is the best thing, cater to you. So things like, I guess, Quizlet is kind of starting to work on something. I think Duolingo as well, where you can actually, it'll ask you questions. If you don't get it right, it'll keep asking you, kind of trying to drill down where you're at and then going from there. I guess it's a little bit like McGraw-Hill's adaptive learning, I think.
exactly.
But a little more personal.
Mm-hmm. And the other implication that we wanted to bring up, and this is a personal for us too, is focus away from a lone instructor to a learning team. Because again, as designers, we support faculty with their work with students. But going forward, I think there has to be a greater acknowledgement that in robust learning organizations, there's a whole team working towards the interest of the students. And I think that requires a greater acknowledgement of the impact of designers and technologists. I think, during COVID, many of us in design and learning technology, we're very proud of our efforts. And then we were able to showcase for the first time how vital we were to the whole educational ecosystem.
Right.
But then COVID ended. And as I said to Mike the other day, there was a sort of a back to the barracks mentality. Okay, you guys go away and just revert back to the old model. I think in any educational institution that really wants to maximize impact for students, there has to be a more sense that you're not relying on lone instructors. You're learning on a whole learning team, of which the instructor is the lead and most public face, a vital component, but not the only component. I just feel there has to be more acknowledgement as we become more and more technology dependent and dependent in more complex ways.
Yeah, and Peter, you had mentioned it's almost like when you go to the hospital. You don't have just the doctor; the nurses are a huge part of support, the technicians, and so on and so forth. So it is very important that we're all in this as a team. And I always say, part of my job is to make faculty or instructor look like a rock star. So it's definitely a team kind of mentality and spirit, and we definitely need to keep that up.
Thank you. Okay, great. Next slide. Again, this is a tongue-in-cheek. This is the initial response to, a lot of people were saying, "Oh my God, it's a plagiarism tool," and I was like, "No, it's so much more." Yes, that some people are going to use it to cheat. Virtually any technology that we've introduced into education, students have used to cheat. And before that, there were paper mills. That's ongoing, but the potential here is much greater. And we're going to talk a little bit about teaching assistants and cognitive tutors, as well as applications of these tools for educational staff, not just faculty and students, but for other members of the educational community. Next slide.
So I had to throw this slide in. So the other day, there was someone that relayed to me that there is an episode about ChatGPT in South Park. It was fantastic. I love South Park because they basically argue two sides. They'll give you a pro and a con. And it all started out because I guess Clyde's girlfriend was gushing how he was writing such beautiful lovey-dovey messages to her. And Stan's girlfriend got upset because all he did was put a thumbs up with everything she said. So she came and wanted to talk to him, wanted to break up with him. So he goes over to Clyde and he's like, "What are you doing?" And Clyde's like, "Yo, ChatGPT." And he's like, "What's that?" And so I think I took a quote where he said, it's, it does all this, stuff, but it's really great with dealing with chicks. And that's basically where it came to. And then after that, Mr. Garrison starts kind of reading papers, and he's like, "What? I have to take more time to read these papers." And so his partner goes to him, "Why don't you use ChatGPT to review and give feedback to the papers?" He's like, "Oh, that's great." And so you see that happen, and apparently a meeting happens where the counselor comes into and says, "There's the school board sending a technician to see who's using ChatGPT," and on the bottom image there, that's what the guy on the right was. He had a hawk shadow bane, and he was ringing a bell, like putting pixie dust over the paper and stuff to see if it was from ChatGPT. But it was a great episode. They really did argue great points and the bad points for it. So I highly recommend it if you get a chance to take a look at it.
I'm going to actually drop into the chat a real live instance of what Michael said. There was a visit at a university in Great Britain a few weeks ago, and they was asking how you're using with Chat GPT with your students. And one faculty member said, one student says, "Well, my Tinder profile is crap. It never gets." And they said, "Well, why don't you just have Chat GPT write your profile?" And so the student did, and he got an incredible increase in terms of responses. So, reality has outpaced the satire. I mean, using tools to make yourself more attractive. I mean, that's human nature. Whatever works, whatever gets you to the sandbox to play with the tool, that's it. So,
but he was blindly texting his girlfriend, and so she would come up to him and say, "I didn't know about that. I didn't know there was an issue in Switzerland." So that kind of tells you need to really kind of go through and read everything that's being spat out from ChatGPT. So
yeah. So, great point. Next slide. Okay, yeah. So what academics think ChatGPT is good for, and then and even Noam Chomsky weighed in rather grumpily, basically high-tech plagiarism. But our argument, next slide, is that it's more of a friend than a foe, and that's what we're going to emphasize in terms of things like using it to give feedback on student work. One of my earliest interests in AI was as a writing teacher, using AI to respond to student essays because of the sheer volume of work. And so I began looking, and there were a couple of companies out there a few years ago that were actually producing products using AI to generate basic feedback to student essays within a few seconds. And naturally, I was very interested in that. And so when ChatGPT came out, I recently saw a demonstration of not only having the chatbot respond to a student essay, but also generating a rubric by which you could judge the student essay. And we'll see a little bit about that in a few minutes. The next slide. Yes, basically they can be your friend, not your foe, but you have to supply the wine. Next slide.
So yeah, there was a presentation by Devin Walden. And he was showing what could possibly be done. You have different kind of tools here. Like one would be like a syllabus helper, where you put in the topic. Is it writing intensive? How many weeks? And you hit build, and it builds his whole syllabus with the outcomes, just different assignments that they can give, and it really, really, when you see it happen live, it was just like, wow. And can you imagine if an LMS got a hold of that and kind of did all that? It would just build everything out kind of the way you want it specifically. And then the other one was an assignment helper, where you could put a topic in there, what kind of style do you want it, and then what modality, in person or online, and then collaboration, personal or small groups, and then he hit build, and it spat this out. It's just amazing that he took the time to build it. And he's at a small school, right?
Community college, Northern Essex Community College in Haverhill, Massachusetts.
Yep. And so the output you can easily take, you copy and paste it, and of course you're going to clean it and go through it, but it's a great jumping off point. I can tell you, whenever I write things, I always have writer's block in the beginning, how to kind of begin or lead into something. I am very weak at. I will be the first to tell you that. But this is huge help, very huge help. I may or may not have used it a couple times for a few things. So but it works great. And it's just the implications down the line for this are going to be insane. I mean, I think we're going to have kind of, in the beginning, I think we're going to have every vendor in our face trying to sell something, the shiny new car toy, shiny red car. And, I feel that it's going to be chaos for maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And then you're going to see kind of the power players kind of emerge from kind of the sandbox or the corral. And basically, I think we'll start to see it kind of calm down. But, like we said before, Facebook isn't in it yet. Google's just starting to get into it. And so it's going to be kind of crazy for a little bit, I think.
Exactly. So, we actually, in the resource page that I have, that I created, there is a link to a presentation by Devin where he displays these tools. And I strongly recommend as a follow-up that people take a look at that. So,
yeah, there was one where he was, where basically, like I was saying before, it was like adaptive learning. You pick a topic and then a subtopic, and it starts asking questions. If you get it wrong, then it does not dumb down, but it drills down to a smaller level, and then basically you can go from there. And then if you are deficient in something, it spits out a ticket that you can take to the tutoring center, basically. At least that was the idea of that he was showing us. So,
yeah, great resource. Next slide. So, the issue about virtual teaching assistance. When I have talked with educators about the potential of this technology, I have emphasized how it can help them. And as a teacher myself, the thing that I find most difficult about the work is the volume of time I spend writing response and feedback. So when I see AI as a tool that could generate at least some basic responses to my students, which I can get back to them quickly, then I see it as a tremendous win for both myself and for my students, because I know that the impact of feedback depends upon how quickly it returns to the person seeking feedback. I also know that by freeing up my time and energy from having to read and write so many comments, I can devote my energy to other things as well. So I think for many instructors, particularly those of us in state and community colleges where we don't have teaching assistants, I think the potential here is very, very exciting. The second thing is the idea of the cognitive tutor. This is where our students can greatly benefit from this. I think that the cognitive tutor is really the thing which can really be the game changer for students. And we've had so many equity initiatives over the past few years, and I don't know how impactful many of them have been, no matter how well intentioned. But I think getting cognitive tutors in front of students can really supercharge the attempts to make education more equitable, because it gives students, particularly struggling students, potentially one-to-one tutors. Yep. And as Mike pointed out earlier, tools like this can also help students generate ideas by giving them prompts to say, think about this, think about that. So I think there is tremendous potential here to really change how we do things fundamentally in a way that other learning technology has not done.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. Peter, I was telling you this with my son. My son's in, I think, 7th grade, and he had to come home. He had to build a presentation of what it was like an advertisement for Rhode Island in colonial America. And so, he's like, well, maybe I should go to Wikipedia. I'm like, wait a second. And so I opened up ChatGPT and I started kind of putting in parameters that we were looking for, and boop, 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 my son's jaw just dropped. And he was like, what is this magic? And it was amazing. It actually helped us get through. It was a great springboard where we could further, and it gave citations, which were good. And we went through and researched and helped him with the project. And it was a great experience, actually. There was no plagiarism. Like I said, it was just a way to kind of get things going.
Yes, and one of the things about some initial educators were like, well, let's just discourage them from using it at all. It's kind of like the early days of the internet, where we said, well, they can't use that internet thing at all. It doesn't work. Also, our students are growing up in a society where one of the fundamental principles is if you can get a machine to do something for you and it does it as well or better than a human, you have the machine do it. So trying to get them not to use AI is kind of contradictory to what they hear outside the classroom. But what we can do is have thoughtful conversations with them about appropriate versus non-appropriate ways of using the AI. Absolutely. That's really, at the end of the day, all we can do in terms of holding them back from it. So.
Yeah, really. I mean, with students, I think if you kind of lead them to the water the right way, I think it can be really effective in what they're doing. Like there was that one example. I don't know if you want to bring it up with I guess we could show it ChatGPT. An example would be where an English teacher might ask ChatGPT to basically create papers with a little bit of grammatical error, some poor sentence structure, and then maybe kick out like 3 of those. And what the instructor can then do is hand the grading rubric to the students to go through and kind of go and correct whatever is wrong. And it could foster a dialogue. And especially with group work, you could definitely do that.
Right. There's huge potential here. And I think there's also a great potential for AI to be used to generate open educational resources.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. Yeah, the revision part is the hard part. Like, the first version comes out, the big problem is kind of the revisions, kind of the second editions. You did the strong, the hurdle of getting the first book, first content created. And I've just read kind of all over where it's a little bit tougher to kind of keep it going. So this can definitely help with the heavy lifting.
Excellent. Yeah. Great. Next point. Yeah. So there have already been conversations in the press, obviously, about AI. Obviously, business is rushing into to invest in it. Such luminaries as Henry Kissinger and Noam Chomsky have had, op-ed pieces on AI. I'm inclined to favor Kissinger's view more than I am Chomsky's on this, with all due respect to him. Kissinger, along with I'm trying to think, a gentleman who used to be the CEO of Google, as well as an MIT professor, wrote a book a few years ago on AI, which would be worth perusing to give you a kind of cultural overview of its implications, which I always think helps inform our decisions. So we're going to be talking a lot about this over the next year. And I'm assuming many of you here are going to be people at your institutions who help foster these conversations. And again, one of the things we hope to do today is give you a sense of how to model that conversation. Allay people's fears without poo-pooing the complications it's going to cause for them, but at the same time seeing the possibilities of it as well.
Yeah, very true.
Okay, next slide.
Yeah.
So again, the virtual assistant is the one that I think gets people most excited as faculty. Eric Schmidt, thank you, Peter. Eric Schmidt, that was the fellow who go with them. Yeah. One of the things that we hope to demo a little later on is using ChatGPT to respond to a student or not a student, but a sample paper created to look like a typical student paper. Now, I know there was an observation that yes, AI can do basic feedback. It can actually these days do more than basic feedback. Now, as a writing teacher, what I would do is if I have it set up with the parameters of an assignment, I would have it generate some paragraphs of response to which I would then add my own comments. So I wouldn't take myself out of the equation. I would use it to augment what I'm already intending to do. Give it a lot of basic feedback and then add a few comments of my own and then get it back to the student much more rapidly than I could in the past.
Right. That's boosting your productivity to design, to create, having more time to design and create without doing the mundane kind of thing over and over again. So it definitely can help out with process. I think someone was surveyed, I think it was at MIT, where productivity was boosted 50%, I think.
Right. I'm gonna we on that research page. If you give me guys a couple hours, I will add the MIT working paper link to our resource page so you can look at it yourself. But again, it's a working paper by two of the graduate students saying that in fact writing productivity was in fact significantly boosted by using AI tools.
Mhm.
And yeah, virtual assistants can be very powerful. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the story of Jill Watson, an AI tool that was created at Georgia Tech a few years ago, which helped the faculty answer students' questions. And the computer science instructor had, 100 students, but the AI was able to respond at all hours, and students were really grateful. In fact, they even nominated the AI for a teaching assistant award. So it has a lot of potential as long as the tool is well designed.
Absolutely.
Yes, Kelly said, perhaps I can have AI respond to emails. Yes, actually, that would be something that an AI assistant could do. As long as they see the language, they would say, "Thank you for asking. I understand the issues. However, here's what we say in the syllabus." Yes, an AI could totally do that.
Yeah, and then also AI. If you for even recording, you could just give a sample of your voice with a little bit of inflection, and then after that, type out a speech, and it'll actually it'll say the whole speech kind of in your voice using different inflection, and you can actually use like an image as well, where I think it has you talking, but I know it's definitely your voice. Maybe you do a couple sentences, and then from there, anything that you type, it will basically it's you talking. So
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah, it's scary. It's scary good. It's
You
scary.
might have like maybe the reporter setting, the radio disc jockey setting. I don't know, just different things on for the output of your voice, right?
Exactly. Next slide. This is just a quick example of some of the comments that Jill Watson, the chatbot I referred to, was using a couple of years ago. It could do reminders to students, and again, it could learn. It learns from what the students are saying, to it slowly adapts to the information inputs. That's the important thing. That's one of the things that makes it different from the tools we had a couple of years ago, which simply aggregated data from the internet. This is more adaptive, and that's going to be a key factor. It's not just collecting information and spitting it out. It's going to adapt to what it's hearing. It is machine learning. It learns more and more from the people who are using it. So over time, a chatbot built for a particular class will learn more and more about the kind of questions and inquiries it gets from students and devise better responses.
I'll tell you, the Bing experience. If you can get in on the Bing preview, it is amazing because it's pulling live data. It's pulling everything that's kind of current going on. And actually, the only thing that made me upset because we couldn't use it, there's a 2,000 character limit. But it was really cool because what you're going to see in a little bit, I was putting in kind of part one, and it said, okay, where's the rest of it? And so I put it in part two. Wait, you're missing a paragraph. And it was just like, wow, really wow. Because it was going off the rubric that the parameters I already would put in there. And it was quick. It was nice. You can get in on the preview. It's really, it's wild.
Great. Excellent. An idea generation tool. Again, as Mike pointed out earlier, some of our students, they get stuck. They're not initially as creative. They get frustrated. It's a frustration point for a lot of students. So sometimes a tool says, okay, here are some suggestions. And a tool like AI Sparkwriter I use to generate ideas. And I found, it did help point me in the right direction. Didn't do the work for me, but it said, you might want to think about this. So again, for a lot of students who are frustrated in their work in terms of the ability to generate ideas and be as creative as others, it can be a great way to augment what they do.
Right.
Okay, next slide. Again, I refer to Donald Clark, who's done a lot of work in the field of AI and learning. And Donald, as his wont, is really puts his finger on the pulse. This is really a profound moment in learning. AI will change why we learn, what we learn, and how we learn. It is not an enemy to education. It's transforming our learning and teaching back to dialogue. And I think that is a core idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to start again, as I was saying before. I think we're going to see things kind of go more to the personal side, where you are, life experiences, life experience growing up in this town, writing about that, and things of that nature. So
Right. Great. So the key term with AI is it doesn't replace us. It should augment us. And that's one of the things we want to convey to students is like, if you're trying to use it, do everything for you, where there's zero input or human labor, you will cheat yourself in the long run. As Brenda pointed out, if a student tries to use it solely to do all their work, they're going to impact. And that's probably what our message should be is you have to have at least rudimentary skills to use it. It's a tool. Just because I have a hammer in my hand doesn't know how I swing at a nail properly. Some students will hear that and get the message. Others won't. And when they do, they'll pay the price. But I mean, all you can do is give them a friendly warning. We can't make the tool go away. All we can do is here is the most intelligent way to use it.
Right.
You know.
And what was it? The parameter you gave me the term when you're inputting the parameter, you have to be a specialist for.
Yes, input in prompt engineering was the term I've heard used.
Prompt engineering. Yep. Because it all depends on what you put in, what you're going to get out. So,
right.
Absolutely right. And hopefully, you know, I don't know if anyone saw the movie Megan. Yeah, I don't want AI getting like that, but yeah. Tony Stark, I can deal with that with Iron Man.
Yeah, it's the idea to augment. Some people will try to get it to do everything. That again, that's human nature. There's no tool to eliminate laziness, but the people who are really smart about these tools will use them as an augmentation tool. You know,
yeah.
That's the key for understanding.
I do want to try it once, though, when texting my wife. I want to see if she can catch on. See what she says. So I think that's it. So
so that was basically the overview we wanted to give you. We wanted to really generate a conversation about these. What's Mike is going to do next? We're going to try to do a quick demo with ChatGPT where he inputs a rubric and a what is made to look like a sample student paper.
Wish me luck here. I'm still getting used to
luck. Yeah, okay. So
here it is.
But in the meantime, if you can put questions in the Q&A, that'd be great because it'll be lined up and running for us to tackle them.
All right. So what? Got a little help here, and Peter refined this as well. Basically, one of the department chair here gave me an essay, and then in the essay he gave a rubric as well. So I took the essay. First, we were putting in the parameters. Peter created this, putting the parameters in. You know, grammar, mechanics, all points. So this is a rubric: style and tone, appropriate tone, overall evaluation, and everything. You see the 5 points, 10 points, and so on. So total points is 100 points to evaluate a 6-paragraph essay. And this is where I was getting hung up in Bing because somehow I kept getting cut off at the character count. And so it kept telling me, I thought he was getting mad at me, but it kept telling me, you know, we need the last paragraph. We need the last paragraph. I'm like, yeah, I'm putting it in. But so I'm like, forget this. I'm going to go over to ChatGPT. And so we key it in everything. And then here is the essay. It's 6 paragraphs long. It's definitely over 2,000 characters. And then, so everything's there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and submit it. And it's going to grade this for us. There we go. Got 100. Last time I did it, got a 95. So
obviously this, you know, the faculty member is not going to shouldn't rely entirely on it, but it will generate an initial text, which the faculty in their expertise and time will then augment with their own comments, and then share it with the students, hopefully much more rapidly than we would than typical. Because when you're going through a volume of papers and you want to be thoughtful, it takes a lot of time. So we've always lacked the speed factor. Now, you know, if we can get meaningful feedback to our students within 12 hours of them submitting it, the chances of the feedback impacting what they actually do is greater. And again, it goes back to more of a dialogue model because we're talking back and forth about their writing and their work.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really the key idea here is that it's a tool to augment your existing ability as a faculty member. Because again, the ratio of faculty to students is always one of our biggest challenges. And this may help level the playing field. Absolutely.
I agree 100%. And it basically, it equalizes for tutoring Like there's no issue there where basically one-to-one, if someone only has a phone and not a computer, they can just use their phone for the tutoring, just plug in questions and help study from there. Because we're finding more and more students might not be able to get a computer and they have a phone. So it's amazing what it can do. It really is. Good question. Should we go through the questions?
Yeah. So now is the really the fun part where we hear your questions.
So we have a question from Angela asking, any best practices on how and when to cite the use of GPT in generating course information?
You know, I don't know whether you use APA or MLA, but I would look at APA. I would cite it like an internet resource. And you know, no one's weighed in yet on what is the right way to do it. So as long as you do a reasonable effort to acknowledge its contribution, I think for now it would be fine. I think within a year or so, we're going to start seeing different organizations weigh in on what they consider to be the proper way of citing. But as long as you do an approximation, I think, you know, you're in a good place.
Yeah, I agree.
We have another one from Ahmed asking, would you tell your students that it was graded by ChatGPT?
I would not say it was graded by ChatGPT, but I would be open that ChatGPT helped me with the ultimate grade decision should be with the faculty member. The AI tool can recommend the range of it based upon the parameters, but I would say I'm the fact that I grade it. So that's how I would tackle that.
Especially if you created the rubric, right?
Yeah.
We have a question from Warren. Warren's asking, can you ask ChatGPT to compare all essays for plagiarism between students?
Interesting. I've not, you know, it would really depend upon how you ask the question. If you submitted a bunch of student essays and say, you know, do you detect any plagiarism? I suppose it might come up with an answer, but it really depends upon the input, how you ask the question. There are some tools like ChatGPT 0 that are attempting to pick up on whether a student has used AI to cheat.
But that's for ChatGPT. If you're using it for Bing, I think it went to like an 80% of false positive, I think. Right. And then, and that's the other thing that like the Turnitin's, I don't even know who else is out there because we only use Turnitin, Safe Assign, I guess, wherever. You know, you're going to see this flurry of people saying we have this, we can do this, but you're going to see different AIs pop up. So it's really fingers and toes in the dam, the dike. It's going to be a crazy mess. You know, we're going to see every salesman and their brother coming at us, you know, trying to sell us. And so it's just, like I said, it's probably going to take a little bit of time for things to die down a little bit. And then from there, you'll see a stronger kind of consensus coming out from these companies. Like I did hear somewhere that they were actually considering putting a watermark on ChatGPT. So like some sort of watermark copying and pasting. So that's one thing I did hear. I think it was Brian Alexander's first one.
And again, I think these are just temporary measures. I think in the long run, they're not going to be terribly effective, but in the short term, they may reassure people. But again, I think we really have to go to the work of rethinking about how we do academic assessment in light of this technology. I think that's really where things are going. And I think rather than saying, oh, we'll get another plagiarism checker, that's temporary.
Authentic assessment.
We have to think, we have to think more long term.
Yep, I agree.
So
awesome. We have a question from Crystal asking, is it possible that you could tweak the grades, as in, you know, change the parameters a little bit, or are those parameters firm? For example, for a student that may have with accommodations for their way of writing and so on.
That's a good question.
If you use an AI, and you're doing an accommodation, you can input into the prompt.
Yeah, you probably could put the parameter in of whatever, I guess, whatever, if the disability is, and maybe somehow if this then, you know, adjust kind of, or if this then that. So that's what Alexa uses. So yeah, I think you probably could. I'm telling you, the Bing product is crazy. If you get a chance to get on it, you definitely want to get on. It only took like 3 or 4 days. I had to wait, and I finally got in on it. And it's like I said, I was asking contemporary questions, like what happened in, like, I guess, I'm trying to think of a topic that's non the Oscars last year. What were the ramifications, or what were the prompts that caused the whole Chris Rock, Will Smith, yada yada yada, and what did you think? Who was right and who was wrong? And it was just spitting out info. It gave different sides to the point. So I know it's a bad example, and I apologize, but that's the only thing that popped up in my head.
Yeah.
We have another question from Ahmed asking, should I warn against using it and therefore open their eyes to it, or ask them to use reasonably? How can you draw the line and where?
They're going to find out about it
Yep.
one way or the other. They may not know about it now, but it's going to slowly enter into the cultural conversation. I would say, for those of you who are students who have questions about it, this is my policy. I need to assess your legitimate work. This is what considered legitimate work. This is what I consider non-legitimate work. You have been warned. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I catch you, then the usual consequences for plagiarism. So that's the beginning of it. But I think all faculty should have a larger conversation with their students about what these tools mean for all of them, rather than simply coming out with a punitive declaration. I think it's like there's a moment to what does this mean for us,
Right.
And so I think there should be that kind of philosophical conversation between students and faculty, as well as faculty and faculty, about the meaning of these tools.
Right.
And the resource page, there are 2 YouTube videos there. One is by Charles Fidel of the Center for Curriculum Redesign in Cambridge, who's been talking wonderfully about AI for many years. And Charles can give you a great cultural overview of the impact of this technology, because he's an engineer by training. And the other one is a presentation by a community college professor, Devin Walton.
Yeah, Devin's awesome.
Devin, it was a wonderfully applied AI. This is how we can be using it, and I would share that out with faculty and administrators, because it's so straightforward in terms of here's how it's going to look like in our world if we use it properly.
Yep.
So
yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.